Welcome to historic Glenwood Springs, Colorado, where you can enjoy exhilarating outdoor activities like the Hanging Lake Hike or rafting down the Colorado River or biking along any of the dedicated and scenic hike and bike trails around the city. Afterward, you can enjoy a well-deserved soak or spa treatment at the magnificent Glenwood Hot Springs Resort. These springs were developed into a resort back in 1888 by a fellow named Walter Devereaux. Now, old Walt had a vision to build a world-class spa that would cater to the needs of visitors from all around the world who were looking to soak in these healing waters while at the same time enjoying the natural beauty of this mountain setting. It became known as the Spa of the Rockies, and that nickname stuck and is still in use today. Besides serving as an enclave to the rich and famous, it also served during World War II as a naval convalescent hospital and eventually transitioned into the family-friendly destination resort we see today. So, Walter Devereaux's new Hot Springs Resort brought tourists in by the trainload, and they all needed places to stay. Well, he recognized this need and seized the opportunity to expand his empire by building what would become the luxurious, world-class lodging known as the Hotel Colorado, which opened nearly 130 years ago in 1893. This is a picture of the hotel taken back in the 1890s. As you can see, the hotel doesn't look a lot different than it does today. However, I can't say the same about the hot springs in the foreground. Anyway, this is a beautifully maintained old hotel, and it was like taking a step back in time. If these walls could only talk, just think what tales they might tell, or what secrets they might reveal. The hotel has hosted its share of political dignitaries, celebrities, even gangsters and mobsters. Here's a picture of Margaret Brown. Remember her? Well, if not, this might help. Her nickname is the unsinkable Molly Brown of Titanic fame. She was one of the fortunate survivors of that fatal shipwreck and a repeat guest of the hotel. Rough Rider and then President Teddy Roosevelt was such a frequent visitor here at the hotel that they sometimes refer to it as the White House of the West. So, before we check into our campground today, we decided to go ahead and have a relaxing alfresco lunch right here on their beautiful patio. And now, with our bellies full, on to the campground. We're lucky enough to score a spot right here at the Glenwood Canyon Resort along the banks of the Colorado River. Our campground is located about 3 miles east of Glenwood Springs in an area with a very unusual name. It's called No Name. So my first thought was that they hadn't named this place yet. But almost at that very same instant, I realized, no, that is the name. No Name.
Made this place a geographical oddity.
Anyway, this unincorporated community has a creek named after it, as well as a hiking trail, and it has its own exit sign on the freeway, as well as a beautiful rest stop along the Colorado River where you can get out and stretch your legs on the Glenwood Canyon Recreation Path, which is a paved walking trail right alongside the Colorado River. It's essentially a suburb of Glenwood Springs. This campground has a lot of different lodging options to choose from, beginning with these cute little cabins with sleeping lofts, to glamping tents, to regular tent sites, and of course, the RV sites. This is the office and camp store where you check in. There are 2 nice clean bathhouses on this property. This is the larger of the 2, which has laundry facilities as well. Besides its riverfront location, this is one of my favorite things about this campground. Defiance Rafting Company is located right here on site, and we were able to book a rafting trip without ever having to leave the campground. And look at this, your own private beach area for launching personal rafts or kayaks. You talk about convenience. This place defines it. Or should I say defiances it? Okay, onward to our campsite, where we'll unhook the Jeep and guide the old second wind into her new backyard right here along the banks of the mighty Colorado. Now that she's all backed in, we can set up our campsite and then sit back, relax, and enjoy that beautiful river. Uh-oh, Cookie spots a bear across the river. Are you looking for a bear over there? Yeah, Cookie? Cookie? Stay? 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 What do you see, huh? What is it? Do you see bear? Yeah. Do you see? You're supposed to be looking for bear. Can you look for bear? Okay, honey, you just sit. Just sit. Just sit. It's okay. That bear's not going to get you. We're heading up to check out the No Name Bar and Grill that's down by our campsite. It's closed now because of COVID, but we're told that when it's open, it's a happening place where you can enjoy food, drinks, and live entertainment. There's also another larger lodging option on the second floor of this complex. This area is also where you'll find the ropes course, the zip line, and the climbing wall. However, nothing was open while we were there. Glenwood Springs is a wonderful hike and bike-friendly town. In fact, another huge benefit to our campground is that we were able to ride our e-bikes directly from our campsite right here to the Glenwood Canyon Recreation Path, which happens to be directly adjacent to our campground. Another fabulous convenience, especially considering the fact that we forgot our bike helmets on this trip. So we were able to just stay exclusively on the paved bike trails, with just minor exceptions. So this trail is completely paved and is a little over 16 miles one way. It extends from Glenwood Springs all the way to Dotsero, Colorado, and most all of it is along the beautiful Colorado River. You can travel it in both directions, with many access points along the way. You can see a variety of wildlife along the route, including a few of the rafters and tubers going down the river. The route is relatively flat, which makes it a really nice ride for all ages and abilities. It's a stunning scenic ride which we highly recommend. From our campsite, it was about 2 miles into town, and we enjoyed some of the most beautiful scenery along the way.
Never bothered about what could be coming. Every day we danced and life was smiling. We were young and drunk in love. A few years later I have started thinking, if it's just love in every glass I'm drinking, we're like one and without you I'm sinking. I'm always shining next to you. Oh, I got you, there's no reason to chasing pavement on my own, 'cause you're here to stay every night and day. I'm delighted 'cause I got you.
So, this covered portion of the trail here crosses Interstate 70, which is a major artery connecting the west to the east. And as you can see here, there's not a single vehicle in sight. The freeway is 100% closed to through traffic from Glenwood Springs all the way to Silverthorne, Colorado, due to a catastrophic landslide that occurred just 3 days before our arrival. These are the no-name tunnels, which I-70 passes directly through, and our campground is on the other side of these tunnels. We originally came here to attend our nephew's wedding, which was only 45 minutes away in Beaver Creek. However, the landslide closed Interstate 70 indefinitely, effectively cutting off our convenient access to the wedding. We would now have to detour around it and find another campground. The detour was troublesome, but doable. However, finding another campground within 60 miles of the wedding venue on a weekend in the summertime in Colorado was virtually impossible. But luckily, a campground in Breckenridge called us back on Friday and reported a single night cancellation for Saturday, which allowed us to make the wedding. But we didn't get to make the rehearsal dinner. So we were here in Glenwood Springs and initially only 45 minutes away from the Vail Beaver Creek area. However, the detour that we took over Independence Pass proved to be a long 7.5-hour drive. We had to disconnect the car from the motorhome and drive separately because of road restrictions. It was a pretty scary drive with narrow, winding roads and steep drop-offs. But we finally made it and had a wonderful time celebrating our nephew's momentous day. As an unexpected and exciting bonus along our detour, we were just outside of Aspen, Colorado, and heading up toward Independence Pass when we happened upon this lovely female moose brunching along the bottom of these wetlands. Good, she thinks, as she comes up with a mouthful of what appears to be grass and mud, but to her was a yummy, yummy meal. It certainly was a treat to catch a glimpse into the day of this beautiful animal. So now we'll say goodbye to this pretty girl and head back to Glenwood Springs and our bike ride.
Chasing payment on my own, 'cause you're here to stay every night and day. I'm delighted 'cause I got you. La la la.
We just love these e-bikes. We've had them for more than 2 years and have put well over 500 miles on them. They are so convenient for touring and exploring all of the places that we visit. It's a completely different and unique perspective going at this slower pace. Being able to maneuver so easily allows us to stop and go at our leisure, and parking is a breeze on these things. Oh, and of course, the extra little boost of power available when going uphill isn't too shabby either. It's just such a super fun and convenient means of getting around. So we've arrived at Two Rivers Park, which is named after the confluence of the Colorado and the Roaring Fork rivers. The Colorado River is on the left. It's muddy brown as a result of the recent landslide activity upriver. And the clear blue-green one on the right is the Roaring Fork River coming down from Aspen. To me, the mixing of these waters represents a swirling, natural work of art, which I find incredibly hypnotic and beautiful.
Before pouring like a waterfall, I've cried a million tears and more to find out where I belong.
So there are miles and miles of these multi-use trails around here, and this footbridge connects to the Rio Grande Trail, which allows you to ride all the way up to Aspen if you want. Of course, this would be a long 42-mile uphill journey one way. However, there are several bike shops which offer shuttle services and will take you up and drop you off, so you can then enjoy a downhill ride all the way back into Glenwood Springs. It's definitely on our to-do list for the next visit, as well as the Hanging Lake hike if it's open.
I'm delighted 'cause I got you. La 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 la. Time is up, nothing to do. You are gone, that makes me blue. But here he comes to take me to.
Thank goodness my drone self-rescued, or this could have been a very expensive bike ride. Now we're heading back to downtown Glenwood Springs via this pedestrian hike and bike path. Here's another view of the wonderful Hot Springs Resort. It's a nice overlook here for some great photo ops. It's a nice and wide path and conveniently gets us across the Colorado River. But the coolest thing about it is this bike-friendly elevator which takes us down to street level. I've never seen anything like this before. It's so cool. It's pretty large too. I suspect this could accommodate at least 4 bicycles. Okay, we're coming out into the historic downtown area. Down here you can find a multitude of restaurants and plenty of shopping boutiques, ski and bike shops, as well as old historic buildings such as the train station and the Hotel Denver. Here we see the present-day Glenwood Springs Amtrak station. It sits right along the southern bank of the Colorado River and directly across the street from the Hotel Denver. It officially opened more than 100 years ago in 1904. It was built by the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad and replaced an older structure. Rail service here has been ongoing since the late 1880s. Amtrak's iconic California Zephyr makes regular stops here. In 2021, the rail touring company, Rocky Mountaineer, expanded their service to include a new route on their world-famous brand of luxury train journeys. Look at these beautiful glass-domed coaches. These really maximize your views to make sure you don't miss any of the scenic beauty along the way. Anyway, they now offer a route between Denver, Colorado and Moab, Utah, which they call the Rockies to the Red Rocks. And this route features an overnight stay right here in historic Glenwood Springs. The Hotel Denver was originally called the Denver House or the Denver Rooms. They received a lot of business as a result of their location directly across the street from the train station. Check out this unique picture in the lobby. I found this to be a very interesting picture. The train itself is all hand-inlaid mother of pearl, and the remaining background is all hand-painted. There were 50 of these creative pieces that were originally commissioned as a promotion for various hotels by the Rock Island Railroad Company at the turn of the 20th century. Each background is completely different and unique. It's not clear how many of these pictures remain in existence today, but there are a couple of known remaining pictures, one of which is at the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs, and the other one is in the Smithsonian. The amount of detail in this pearl train really held me transfixed as I thought about the daunting amount of work and patience the artist had to put into this. So, if you're ever in the historic neighborhood of downtown Glenwood Springs, you may want to wander in and take a look at this enchanting piece of old railroad history. Today we just happened to hit the area during their Downtown Music and Market series, which looks like the place to be on Tuesday afternoons during these warm summer months. They have food, music, arts and crafts, clothing, and people just hanging out enjoying the scene. I enjoyed watching this fella dance as though nobody was watching. Hey, is that Mary and Dave? No, it's just their doppelgangers. Well, we have no more time to linger because we're riding the bikes over to a late afternoon hike up to see Doc Holliday's grave at the old historic Pioneer Cemetery. So here we are at the trailhead for the hike up to Doc Holliday's grave. We're at Linwood Cemetery, which is also sometimes called Pioneer Cemetery, and it was less than a 5-minute bike ride from downtown. It's a very short hike. It's less than 2 miles round trip, but it is very steep and it's uphill all the way to the top. The temps were in the high 90s earlier today, so we waited for them to drop a little bit, and we're here now in the late afternoon. It's still pretty hot though. The temps haven't dropped too much. I think they're in the high 80s now, so it's still pretty warm. It's a nice hike though, with pretty views of the surrounding mountains and the town below. And there are a lot of people on this hike, so it must be a very popular trail. Okay, so the secret's out. We actually did this hike yesterday. Came up here, but being such a novice with any type of camera equipment, I had this camera set to slow motion, so the entire hike was in slow motion and I had to trash all the footage. My interest in Doc Holliday is twofold. I was a huge fan of old Western movies growing up, and I remember the Hollywood version of the notorious gunfight at the OK Corral, which took place in the Arizona Territory in Tombstone back in 1881. Along with Wyatt Earp, this is what he was probably most well known for. And then secondly, we both shared the same earlier profession. He was a dentist, and so am I. But then he came out west and became a gambler and gunslinger. Me? I stuck to dentistry, although I have been known to buy a lottery ticket or 2, or 10. Feels nice in the shade.
We're getting close. I think this is where that bench is.
I don't know about his huffing and puffing. As it turns out, Doc Holliday's grave is really just a memorial marker because the records to his precise location have long been lost and nobody knows for sure exactly where his grave is. But the consensus seems to be that he is buried somewhere up here. Here at his marker, visitors have left little mementos which reflect his reputation when he was alive. I thought the miniature whiskey bottles and the playing card were particularly suitable because he was known to be a heavy drinker and gambler. He died of tuberculosis right here in Glenwood Springs in 1887 at the age of 36. All right, let's head over to another infamous grave, and someone whose history was also touched by Hollywood. Kid Curry, also known as Harvey Logan, is another infamous outlaw/gunslinger who's buried here. He ran with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid's Wild Bunch gang for many years during the late 1800s and early 1900s. He died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound at 36 when his imminent capture was at hand. If you're a Western history buff and in the area, this really is a must-do hike. And of course, no trip to Glenwood Springs in August would be complete without a beautiful and refreshing trip down the Colorado River. So this is the mighty Colorado, the same river that carved the majestic Grand Canyon. It is August, so the river is not as fast or as high as it would be during spring runoff, but this works to our advantage. You see, we are not adventurous enough to attempt the intimidating Class 3 rapids at Shoshone, so instead we chose to take a laid-back and scenic canyon float trip. Yet even so, it still offered ample splash to give us a spirited ride. It just proves that you don't have to have big rapids to have a great time on the water. Enough said, we hope you enjoy the ride. We signed up with Defiance Rafting Company right here at our campground. They supplied everything, including the bus ride to our put-in location. Our guide was experienced and regaled us with interesting stories and fun facts about the river and town along the way. One interesting bit of trivia that he brought up was that the town of Glenwood Springs used to be named Defiance. Thus explains the source for their company name, Defiance Rafting Company. Our guide makes a special stop for us here along the riverbank to dip our toes into a small bubbling natural hot spring.
You can see like where it's bubbling up here. Those are other little hot springs.
It just fascinates me to watch these bubbles as they come through the earth, and I find this iridescent green flora equally as interesting. We're now passing under the Pedestrian Bridge and the Highway Bridge, that connects the north and south sides of Glenwood Springs. And here you get a close-up of the confluence of the Colorado and the Roaring Fork rivers that I described earlier in the video during our bike ride. What a great time we've had. In fact, next time we'd like to do it in inflatable kayaks. Woo-hoo! Yeah! That was good! If you like my video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It would mean so much to me. As always, and until next time, thank you for watching.